Welcome to Criminology Chats. I'm your host, J.R. Rainbolt. Catch us every other week on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on your favorite podcast player or YouTube at Criminology Chats Podcast. For today's episode, I am joined by my co-host, Miranda LaCour. When most people retire after decades of public service, they expect to spend their days enjoying time with family, traveling, pursuing hobbies, and finally slowing down. For 64-year-old Andreas Andy Prost, retirement looked exactly like that. He was a husband, a father, a grandfather, to be someday, and former police chief, a man who spent his life protecting other people. But on an August morning in Las Vegas, Andy's life ended in a way so shocking, so senseless, that it would leave investigators, prosecutors, and even seasoned detectives struggling to understand how something like this could happen.
Because this wasn't a tragic accident. This wasn't a distracted driver. And it wasn't road rage.
No, according to police, two teenagers spotted Andy riding his bicycle and deliberately chose him as a target. Then they accelerated.
And what happened next was recorded on video.
And this episode contains discussions of murder, violence, child abuse, and disturbing criminal behavior. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast episode is for informational purposes only and does not constitute psychological, medical, legal, or professional advice, because Miranda and I are neither of those individuals. And the opinions that we may share with you and comments that we may make are solely for entertainment purposes. And I'm JR.
And I'm Miranda.
And this is Murder in Las Vegas. Before we talk about what happened that morning in August, we need to talk about the man at the center of this story. Because when a crime becomes national news, and this crime was, it's easy for the victim to become just another headline. And Andy Prost deserves more and much more than that.
Absolutely. When you start reading about his life, one thing becomes obvious very quickly. This was someone who spent decades helping other people.
Andy was born on June 28, 1958 in Corona, California. He grew up there, attended local schools, graduated high school in 1977, and developed a strong sense of community, responsibility at an early age. The sense of service would ultimately shape the entire course of his life.
And law enforcement became that path.
It did. In 1985, Andy joined the Bell Police Department in California as a patrol officer. Over the next 24 years, he worked his way through the ranks. Co-workers described him as a steady, dependable, and deeply committed to the people he served in the community of Bell. Eventually, he became assistant chief, and finally, he achieved chief of police.
That is the pinnacle of a law enforcement career.
Yeah, very few officers ever reach that level, especially coming from the ranks. A lot of times they hire the police chiefs from outside of the ranks, believe it or not, in a lot of cities. And yet people who work with Andy rarely talked about his title. They talked about who he was as a person.
And that says a lot.
Sure does. Friends described him as a warm, approachable, and generous man. Family members said he always made time for people. His daughter Taylor later described him as a little league dad. I know I've been there. The kind of father who volunteered, showed up, supported everyone around him.
The kind of dad who becomes everybody's dad.
Exactly. After retiring from law enforcement in 2009, Andy wasn't interested in sitting still. He transitioned into corporate security leadership and eventually moved with his wife, Crystal, to Las Vegas. The couple had been married for nearly 35 years. Together, they raised two children, Taylor and Michael.
And by all accounts, they were incredibly close.
Very close from what we were able to determine. Just days before the tragedy, Michael had traveled to Las Vegas from California to spend time with his parents. The family had shared dinners together and enjoyed time that nobody realized would become some of their final memories with Andy.
Those details always hit hard.
Yeah, they do, because hindsight changes everything. The morning of August 14th, 2023 began just like countless other mornings for Andy. He got on his bicycle, headed out for an early morning ride. The weather was typical for Las Vegas in August, warm, quiet, and the roads were relatively empty.
So nothing unusual, and at approximately 6 o'clock that morning, Andy was riding northbound on Tenya Way near Centennial Parkway. At the same time, two teenagers were driving around in a black Hyundai Elantra, and investigators would later discover that this car had been stolen, and they weren't simply joyriding.
No, they weren't just joyriding. According to the police, the pair had already begun committing crimes earlier that morning. Evidence later showed they intentionally struck another vehicle before encountering Andy.
So this was not some split second decision that came out of nowhere.
And that's an important point. It wasn't just a split second decision because the timeline suggests a pattern of escalating behavior. The teens were treating the roads like a game, and that game was becoming increasingly dangerous.
Until they saw Andy.
And when they saw Andy, investigators say the driver moved directly behind him. Andy was, of course, riding in a designated bike lane like he's supposed to. They poised behind him, and he wasn't doing any type of threat to them, wasn't interacting with them, made no gestures towards them. He was just there riding his bike like he always did. And what we're going to do now is we're going to play a portion of the audio from the video that was done by the offenders when they hit Andy. We're providing a trigger warning because you're going to hear on the audio him being hit by the vehicle and dragged.
Then the vehicle accelerated. The Hyundai slammed into Andy from behind. The impact launched him onto the windshield before throwing him onto the roadway. Witnesses immediately called 911.
August 14, 2023, 06:05 and 05 seconds. 911 emergency, Thomas.
The owner of this Apple Watch has taken a hard fall and is not responding to their watch. The emergency location is latitude 36.2782, longitude -115.2515 with an estimated search radius of 5 meters.
Do you need police, fire, or medical?
We need police and medical. There was a hit and run, and this gentleman, I don't think he's alive. I'm looking at him. I just saw it happen, and the guy just took
Okay,
guys in a launcher.
where are you guys at? Is it
Okay,
Tenaya
we are
Centennial?
on Tenaya and Centennial.
Did you
are
witness
north of Centennial, right in front of the apartment.
Did you witness this?
I saw it just as I saw it. I heard it. I saw him. The guy flying on his bike.
Okay, so did you see the accident happen?
Yes.
Okay. What's your name, sir?
I wasn't the only one. There's other people here that saw it.
What's your phone number?
He's breathing.
Okay, what's your phone number?
Don't move. Don't move. Don't move.
Emergency responders rushed to the scene and was transported to a trauma center, but his injuries were catastrophic. At 6:41 a.m., he was pronounced dead. And what makes this case so disturbing is what happened immediately afterward.
Yeah, it does, Miranda, because the driver, of course, didn't stop. The teenagers didn't render any aid. They didn't call for help. According to the investigation, they drove away laughing. Within hours, investigators had located the abandoned Hyundai. It contained extensive front-end damage, and there was fresh blood on the windshield. The evidence instantly connected the vehicle, unfortunately, to the fatal collision with Andy.
At first, police weren't entirely sure whether or not this was intentional.
Correct. Initially, investigators were working on what appeared to be just a fatal hit and run. Even with the circumstances looking suspicious, proving intent was an entirely different challenge.
Especially when the suspects are juveniles. Police eventually identified one of the suspects as 17-year-old Jesus Ayala. At that stage, prosecutors could pursue charges connected to reckless driving and leaving the scene, but they still needed evidence establishing intent. And then, about 2 weeks later, everything changed.
Yes, it did. It changed, and a student at the school for the suspect they still had to identify reported seeing a social media video to his, what they call a community resource officer, CRO, and that video would become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire case.
Because it showed exactly what happened.
And according to investigators, it showed much more than that. It showed what the suspects were thinking before the collision. And that's when detectives realized they weren't dealing with just a reckless, senseless accident. They were investigating a homicide.
When investigators first heard about this video, did they know what they were about to see?
No, they didn't. They just said that there was a video that had been sent around that one of the students reported to the community resource officer. So detectives showed up to review the video. And what detectives ultimately discovered was cell phone footage which recorded from the inside of the Hyundai during the crime spree that was going on that morning with those two individuals. The passenger was filming, and according to a police report,
Which is something most homicide investigators never get. Usually, investigators reconstruct events from physical evidence, witness statements, surveillance footage, or forensic analysis. In this case, police were suddenly looking at a video recorded by the people accused of committing the crime, and what they saw was disturbing.
Yes, it was extremely disturbing. Now we're not going to repeat every graphic detail from the footage, but according to investigators, the video showed the suspects driving through Las Vegas while engaging in dangerous behavior. At one point, they targeted another vehicle and bumped the rear of the vehicle so it would spin out on the roadway. They recorded and captured that particular event on their phone and captured conversations, laughter, encouragement, and what investigators described as excitement.
Not fear, not panic, not somebody accidentally making a terrible mistake.
Exactly. Then the video captured them approaching a bicyclist riding ahead. That bicyclist was Andy. According to the police, review of the footage showed that one of the occupants was encouraging the driver to hit Andy.
That's the moment this case changes forever.
Exactly, because prosecutors now had evidence suggesting intent. Investigators described hearing statements indicating the occupants were preparing for the collision. Then the vehicle accelerated. Moments later, Andy was struck.
And what happened after the impact?
According to the investigators, there was laughter, shockingly little concern for the human being who had just been hit. Instead, detectives described comments focused on getting away from the scene.
Just imagine being with Andy's family and hearing that.
Exactly. It's difficult to even comprehend for me because while Andy's loved ones were beginning the worst day of their lives, the people allegedly responsible were treating it like entertainment.
And the video wasn't just evidence, it became proof that this wasn't an accident.
Exactly. The investigation shifted dramatically. Detectives now believe they were dealing with a intentional killing rather than just a simple car accident where a death occurred. The video also helped investigators identify the second teenager involved. He was a 16-year-old named Vermeer Keys.
And according to investigators, he wasn't simply present.
No, he wasn't, Miranda. Police alleged that Keys was actively participating. He was reportedly recording portions of the crime spree. Detectives also discovered messages sent after the incident. One student who received the video that Keys sent to him later cooperated with investigators. Now, that was a smart thing to do, right?
Hmm.
According to police, the student told detectives that Keys sent him footage of the actual accident. When the student reacted to the video, investigators say messages by Keys followed, encouraging people not to share it with anyone and warning them not to snitch on Keys and his accomplice.
This suggests that there was immediate awareness of what happened and that it was serious. And that's something prosecutors would later emphasize because one of the central questions became whether these teenagers understood the consequences of their actions. The evidence suggested they did, and at least enough to know that they didn't want the video circulating.
Correct. And on September 19th, 2023, which was a little over a month after the incident itself, they arrested Mr. Keys. Now, both suspects were in custody, but that was only the beginning of this case. Every we cover a case, it's important to remember that criminal investigations tell only half the story. The other half belongs to the people left behind.
And for the Probst family, everything changed in an instant.
Yeah, Crystal Probst, which was Andy's wife, they had been married for nearly 35 years. On the morning of the crash, she received an alert from Andy's Apple Watch. And of course, you probably heard that for our listeners on the 911 call. That's what initially alerted the 911 people that something had happened was his Apple Watch. And of course, it was synced with his wife, Crystal's Apple Watch, so the device detected a hard fall. It automatically contacted the emergency services and notified his emergency contacts, which happened to be his wife, Crystal.
At that point, she didn't know what happened either.
That's right. She just thought maybe, as he hit a curb or something, fell off his bike or something like that. At least that's what I probably would have thought of. I certainly would have thought about what actually happened. She and her daughter then, Taylor, rushed toward the location that they had on their Apple Watch from where he had allegedly taken a hard fall. Initially, they believed that he had just simply been involved in some type of accident, maybe fall off his bike or, like I said, hit a pothole or something like that. But what they discovered was far worse.
And from that moment forward, they became advocates. Taylor emerged as the family's public voice. Again and again, she reminded people who her father actually was. Not a viral video, not a headline, not a political talking point, a husband, a father, a friend, a man who spent his life serving others. I think that's one of the most powerful things about this case. The family refused to let Andy be reduced to the way he died.
Exactly. And one thing too I wanted to add here is that after this accident, he belonged to a bicycling club. So they put a what they call a ghost bike at the location of where he passed away. And that is a white bike, and they would put flowers on it or people would sign it. His bicycle club members would sign it, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought that was very a nice thing to do, you know. It's
Yeah,
called a bike.
absolutely.
They insisted people remember how he lived, and I think that was another indication of how he lived with that ghost bike being there.
Yeah. Michael Probst, Andy's son, later spoke about the lessons his father taught him: honesty, humility, perseverance, hard work. The things parents hope they'll leave behind for their children. The legacy of a good man.
Yes, and from all indications, like, in our research in this episode, Andy was a very good individual and good person. But alongside those memories came unimaginable grief because every future milestone now carried a painful absence. Future birthdays, holidays, weddings, grandchildren, moments Andy should have experienced.
And it was all stolen in seconds.
And that's how the family described it, stolen.
Jesus Ayala was a 17-year-old juvenile from Las Vegas when he drove the stolen Hyundai Elantra that struck and killed Andy. His alias is Little Felon. Ayala already had a lengthy, established history within the Clark County juvenile justice system prior to the murder. He had gang ties, too, with a street gang in Las Vegas. He had 18 different felony charges stemming from his behavior, including multiple counts of grand larceny, burglary, leaving the scene of an accident, and battery. When he was arrested, Jesus bragged that he would only face a slap on the wrist, stating he thought that he would receive a minor charge and be out of juvenile detention in 30 days.
Yeah, and just look at this record of his, and he was still on the street able to do this, you know, because of being a juvenile,
Yeah,
okay? And it's just unbelievable, you know? And I love his nickname, don't you? Little Felon. Oh my gosh, what a and he was probably trying to live up to that nickname, you know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Zamar Keys was 16 years old at the time of the incident. He did not have a lengthy record or anything like what Jesus had, but he acted as the front seat passenger who filmed the viral cell phone video and later distributed that video. In the footage, he egged on the driver, shouting, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, hit his ass," right before they mowed down Andy. Records and court proceedings that we were able to view and get through open source methods, along with his statements that was provided, we got a little background on Zamir. He was placed into Clark County Child Welfare System when he was very young, around 8 years old. In 2016, his mother was arrested and charged with 5 counts of child abuse. Authorities found her 5 children, ages 2 to 9 at the time, that she left them alone at home without any access to food and with a knife laying out on the kitchen counter. She later completed probation and had the charge reduced to misdemeanor disorderly conduct. But we couldn't find anything else that indicated that Zamir had had any type of run in with the law.
As the case moved through the court system, another development shocked observers: the behavior of the defendants.
Yes, during early court appearances, based on our research, family members reported seeing behavior that they interpreted as mocking and disrespectful. The courtroom became a source of additional pain for them. Instead of seeing remorse out of the offenders, they believed they were seeing indifference.
Jesus and Jasmir were antagonizing the victim's family. During early court arraignments, both Jesus and Jasmir drew widespread national outrage for smiling, laughing, and making obscene hand gestures, flipping off towards Probst's grieving widow and daughter. And that's something that fueled public outrage, because this wasn't simply about what happened on the road. People were watching how the defendants responded afterward, and many found those responses difficult to reconcile with the severity of the crime, especially given the evidence prosecutors were presenting.
Exactly. As proceedings continued, prosecutors pursued second degree murder charges. The evidence was substantial: the video, the witnesses, forensics, social media messages. the stolen vehicles, and the broader crime spree that occurred prior to Andy's death. Eventually, both defendants chose to accept plea agreements rather than proceed to trial.
And this spared the family from reliving every detail before a jury.
Yes, it did, but also it meant there would never be a full public trial explaining every question people still had about why this happened.
By late 2025, the case reached its conclusion. Ayala eventually signed a plea deal to avoid trial. His defense team argued that accepting the maximum allowed sentence of 20 years to life in prison for second degree murder was his ultimate expression of remorse. He is currently serving his sentence in an adult state prison and will first become eligible for parole in mid 2040s.
And I want to say this about what the attorney said. By him accepting the maximum sentence of 20 years to life in prison for second degree murder, his ultimate expression of remorse, he never said anything about being sorry about what he did. They're just saying, hey, because he decided to accept this, that showed his remorse. I think not. If you don't
No,
state that you're sorry or have empathy about what happened, then no. He accepted that because he was being tried as an adult and he could have got a far severe sentence possibly if he'd went
absolutely.
to trial. That's why he accepted it. Okay. And I'm hoping that when he's up for parole in the 2040s, when he first comes up, that the parole board sees how bad this was and what kind of a heinous crime this was, and they don't allow him out on his first round of parole. Now, tried as an adult too, Keyes pleaded guilty to second degree murder with use of a deadly weapon. He was sentenced to 18 years to life in prison because he committed the crime as a juvenile. He was only 16, and there's a difference in 16 and 17, believe it or not. In Nevada state law grants him the right to apply for parole after serving his 18-year minimum sentence. Following his sentencing, though, he had a few things he spoke about publicly for the first time from his jail. He claimed he was, and I use this in quotations, off acid, which actually means he was on acid, but he said off acid, but that, that's lingo for on acid. And on the morning of the murder, that's what he was taking and could not remember much of the joyride. He added that it was not his fool self that day and admitted that hitting Andy was absolutely not funny and was.
And the sentencing hearing was emotional, very emotional. Crystal Probst delivered a victim impact statement that captured what this crime had truly taken away. Not just a life, an entire future. She's described waking up every day in a world she no longer recognized. That's one of the realities of homicide that rarely gets discussed. The sentence has an endpoint, but the grief doesn't.
No, grief goes on forever, right? For as long as you're alive, you're going to grieve for the person you lost, your loved one. And the criminal justice system eventually closes its file on a case, but the families never get that luxury to close the file. In my opinion, they carry the loss forever, and there's no such thing as closure in that aspect. It's always going to be there, that loss.
Yeah. And Taylor spoke too.
She did. She talked about the milestones her father would never experience with her, the future moments every parent expects to share with their children, the simple things most people take for granted, such as walking her down the aisle at her wedding, holding her baby, his grandbaby. Those opportunities were gone forever. Years after the murder, I reached out to both offenders. Jesus declined to respond to me, but Yasmir, and I got that annotation from you, Miranda. Thank you very much. Eventually sent a message to me, but after he stopped communicating with me.
And this is important because they were his own words.
Yes. And in his message to me, I'd ask him about what he thought about this now that he's had time to reflect on it and to have a couple of years behind him in jail. And he accepted responsibility for his choices. And in the message he sent me, he stated that his actions were not the result of his childhood, even though he had that problem with being in the foster care for a while in Clark County. He described trying to fit in with a particular group that he believed was popular to belong to at the time. He discussed with me that he was on alcohol, marijuana, and LSD on the day of the offense. Most importantly, though, he did acknowledge that there was no justification for what happened.
Did he offer any apology?
Whether listeners believe that apology is sufficient is something each person will decide for themselves. But he stated that prison forced him to confront the reality of what he had done, and he expressed remorse towards everyone affected by the crime. And he told me that he actually later sent them, I guess, either a letter or somehow sent him a communication through his attorney that he was sorry that this occurred.
Yeah. The difficult question is whether understanding came too late. And for Andy, it unfortunately it does.
Yes, it does. In this case, of course, Miranda leaves us with uncomfortable questions. Questions about violence, questions about social media, questions about accountability, and questions about how quickly bad decisions can become irreversible tragedies.
Because just in a few moments, multiple lives were destroyed. Andy lost his life. His family lost a husband and a father. And two teenagers traded their futures for prison cells.
Yeah, no one wins in a case like this. They're only victims, some buried, some grieving, and some living with consequences that will follow them forever.
If you take anything away from today's episode, let it be this: the people we encounter every day are human beings. Every car on the road, every pedestrian, every cyclist, every stranger. Each one has a family waiting for them to come home to.
Andy should have made it home that morning, but he didn't. And because of that, his family carries a loss and they can never truly be repaired.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, we'll see you next time, so stay tuned. Criminology Chats is brought to you by the Chicago School. For more information about the institution, please visit www.thechicagoschool.edu. That's www.thechicagoschool.edu. I would like to extend my gratitude to the students who always participate in these episodes. We want to hear from our listeners, so please email us at criminologychatspodcast@gmail.com. That's CRIMINOLOGYCHATPODCAST@gmail.com. And also, please check out our YouTube channel at https://www.youtube.com/@Criminology Chats Podcast. This podcast is produced and edited by A.M. Peters with additional post-production services provided by Audio Photo Synthesis. I'm J.R. Rainbolt, and I eagerly anticipate you listening to our next episode. Be safe out there.
The views and perspectives shared in these recordings are intended solely for informational purposes and do not reflect the official stance or policies of the speakers of the Chicago School. Any commercial products and manufacturers mentioned are included for informational reasons only and do not imply endorsement or approval by the speakers of the Chicago School.